How do we grow this influence of black leaders, men and women, that can represent our industry inside the ANC, inside the policy-making structures?
Get to grips with the digital environment, put together best practices, what works and what doesn't, very importantly.
In the project that we're doing in Chaplad, we've created a linking bridge between those two little areas there. So it becomes a matter of just 10 minutes walk from one side to the other.
So my message to our CEOs and those chief investment officers is, where at the end of the day do you want to see your role?
So by treating all of our water back to a stage where we can bring it back into the process, we're in effect saving around about 35% of our water usage on site.
Hey guys, welcome back to Youth and the Green Economy. My name is Nolwazi Mbhele, and today we are going to talk about urban ecology. To help me with this topic, I have Gordon Brown and Dante Fillies. Welcome, guys.
Hi, Nolwazi.
Hi, guys. Please just give us a brief introduction about yourself. Gordon?
Yeah, thanks very much indeed. So my name's Gordon Brown. I'm the publisher of Green Economy Journal and greeneconomy.media. And I'm a lawyer by education and training and qualification. However, I've spent most of my life involved in media, with a big focus on media within the green economy. Within that context, I have published peer-reviewed handbooks, run and facilitated many conferences, workshops, panel discussions, and so forth, and published websites and magazines on the topic of green economy.
Thank you. Dante?
Hello, thank you very much, Nolwazi, for having me, and thank you very much, Mr. Gordon. I am Dante Fillies, and I am currently a third-year student for environmental management at CPUT, and I'm just heading towards the sustainability route. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I hope you guys are excited as I am about this topic. So the term for today is urban ecology. I know a lot of people think of this term as an oxymoron because they think of urban development as destroying ecosystems. So Gordon, may you please just give us a brief description of what urban ecology is?
Yeah, sure, 100%. And also just to confirm that, I am not an ecologist nor a scientist. As I mentioned, I'm a lawyer by training, but yes, I've had the great fortune to have many conversations with very educated people on these types of topics. And so what a pleasure. So look, so my understanding of urban ecology really is the study and the bringing forward of policies that speak to the state of the ecology in urban areas, the advantages of promoting a healthy ecology within urban areas. It is really the role of the municipality, the city, and indeed its citizens to do everything they can to advance the ecology within a city. And I just want to highlight and pick up on what you said in your intro there, Nolwazi, which is that, it is this an oxymoron? Is this a contradiction in terms? And I think that in some ways it is. In other ways, it's one way to think of it is that the ecology is literally what you see out the window. Okay, so the ecology is what's going on around us, and of course it is a sum of all living things. So it's the trees and the animals, the fauna and the flora, and so forth. And so yes, we might think of the urban space or as cities as places without plants and animals, but that's not true. Every city in one way, shape or form has an ecology of some kind. Yes, of course, it is true that in order to create an urban space, you need to, pave, you need to bulldoze that place, destroy whatever's the natural spaces there in terms of ecology, and put down, paving and build buildings and streets and railway lines and all the things that we associate with the city. And of course, that the initial impact of that is highly degrading on the ecology. But what happens is that nature comes back. And in addition to nature coming back on its own, there are a series of actions that that city planners can use to firstly ensure that part of the city's ecology is retained, so that there's within the urban space, there's actually a whole strategy around conservation that is brought in. And the earlier this is brought in the process of a city developing, the better. As the more fundamental that objective is with city planners, the better. And so what we can chat about is all the advantages of having a healthy urban ecology versus a degraded urban ecology. I don't know if that answers your question.
So when you spoke about cities, right? So I'm going to make an example of Johannesburg. Johannesburg population is constantly increasing. And, with urbanization, do you think that it's going to be a challenge to bring back nature in cities that have already been developed?
Yeah, I mean, look, it is a challenge, but it's also a constant, it's a constant ambition of the city to do that. So it's certainly a very live and living topic and series of actions that cities are taking. And certainly there's a ranking of cities that say these cities are better than other cities. There's many different types of rankings, but there's, a ranking for sustainable cities. And the quality of the urban ecology is a major facet in determining whether cities are good or poor in terms of these rankings. But interestingly, the city of Johannesburg has a very interesting and very vibrant ecology. It's interesting insofar as the place where Johannesburg now exists in the past would have been typified by grasslands. It would, of course, there would have been trees and thickets along the riverine areas, but savanna grassland and shrubbery would have been the typical landscape of that place. But since that city developed through the urban planners at the time and through the people who built their houses and grew their gardens there, the city of Johannesburg now plays host to the largest planted forest on Earth. Okay, so we know how important, for example, the Amazon forests are and the Central African forests, and indeed our own forests are from a climate change point of view. Well, right here in South Africa, in Johannesburg, we have the largest planted forest. So all of the benefits that you would associate with a regular forest, I suppose, from an ecological climate change point of view and so forth. Not all of them, of course, but many of these advantages persist in this literally urban jungle that is the planted forest of Johannesburg. And just to give you some statistics, approximately 1.2 million trees in the Johannesburg parks and on the streets of Johannesburg, and in the region of 4.8 million trees planted in private gardens. Now, most of these are in the more affluent northern suburbs of Johannesburg, but there are massive projects underway to introduce trees into the more southern parts of the city, in particular places that due to the apartheid city plan, like Soweto and other townships that never got any trees, to try and plant trees in those communities and in those places, and to bring forward all the advantages of having an abundant urban ecology. But so we can also chat about, I mean, I say it's interesting, yes, interesting because it's big, but interesting also because many of the trees, most of the trees planted in Johannesburg, all of those 1.2 million trees just about, are alien species. So that's also something we can chat about in due course. But to answer your question, can you replant? Can you bring back a healthy, or at least a vibrant ecology into an urban area? And the answer is very simply yes.
Very nice. Dante, do you have a question? You've been listening.
Yes, I do. In terms like urban ecology, it's quite a new concept and everything. What are the pros and the cons within urban ecology?
Yeah, so I mean, urban ecology. I mean, it's not a new idea. It's possibly a new field, right? I mean, it's a field where people have now given it a name, and the various conversations and professional actions and steps and initiatives and so forth that happen under these various headings now been bunched together into, I suppose, a field called urban ecology. But you know, if you consider if you were to break down what it's all about, I suppose, one could look at certain objectives. Now, the primary objective of a city in having a flourishing and healthy urban ecology might initially be as simple as beautification, right? So a street lined with trees is beautiful, right? Public parks that are well manicured and planted, and street verges that have gardens planted in them. These things make these spaces beautiful, and that makes them appealing to residents. And so what you'll find is where you have beautiful suburbs, property values, you know, in these suburbs are underpinned and reinforced by the fact that the suburb in which that property exists is beautiful. Trees are established. There's lots of shade. There are birds and critters and it's appealing. So why is that important? Well, it's important because the city makes money out of rates. So everyone who owns a property has to pay rates. It's a form of tax that's paid to the municipality, and it's based on the value of the property. So it is a primary objective of a city to help and to contribute to the underpinning of value and property value in that city. And one of the key ways that the city achieves that is by maintaining the road verges and the green spaces within that city to ensure that the suburbs in that city are appealing to live in from a point of view of the citizens. And then, of course, if you start to look at it from a point of view of, let's say, broader initiatives, so sustainability at a city level, you might look at considerations such as climate change. Now, so what's happening with climate change, of course, is that we have a heating effect. We have this warming effect. And cities, the existence of cities has a negative impact on us because because as hard paved areas, they get hot, and so this has the effect of creating raised temperatures in respect of where those cities are. And this is in fact called the heat island effect. So if you were to look at, imagine you've got a line and you're in the farmlands, and then you reach the city, and then you go back into the farmlands. Then what happens is the graph of temperature would be low when it goes through the farmlands. When it gets to the city, it goes up, and then as it leaves the city, it comes down, and then it's low again as it goes off into the farmland. So that peak of temperature is referred to as the heat island effect, and it happens wherever you have a large area that's paved and we have an absence of ground cover, of natural ground cover. So this is negative. It's negative for many reasons. Firstly, it just has this pure heating effect on the broader environment, but it also has a heat effect inside the city, and it makes offices and apartments in the city hotter. So it means that people need to use more energy to cool those spaces. So one of a single strategy that's or an overarching strategy that directly affects urban ecologists is this idea of having trees and gardens and planting in the city. So you might have a city that's quite devoid of these things. And so ways you can do this is you can obviously plant along the roadside. You can plant wherever you've got open space. You can plant on rooftops. You can plant on the sides of buildings. So there's a whole bunch of things that you can do in areas where you can plant that will serve to reduce this heat island effect. So another aspect of that is of course, and we were talking about forests earlier. I mean, one of the key things the key role that forests play in relation to climate change is that forests convert carbon dioxide into oxygen. So they act as a store of carbon, and this is a very, very positive thing, which is why it's so negative that we're destroying our natural forests. So one of the ways to counter that, of course, we've got to stop destroying the natural forest, but one way to counter that is to plant more trees in the urban spaces, right? So the existence, for example, in Johannesburg of this massive planted forest is that it serves the broader objective of reducing carbon dioxide. There's also a more direct effect on human health, and that is, of course, as part of this. So it's the fact that trees are oxygenating the air every night means that the general quality of the air in that city is going to be improved. So obviously you've got things that are undermining that air quality. So the presence of cars going backwards and forwards and tailpipe emissions, buildings obviously releasing air-conditioned air into the atmosphere and so forth. I suppose even our own presence breathing has that effect. But by bringing through the trees and planting forests in these urban spaces, you have an immediate and very obvious positive impact on the quality of the air, and that has a positive impact on the health of the people in the city, which has also makes people feel better, makes people enjoy the city more. It helps people to be more productive. So all of these things are super positive. Another benefit another obvious and direct benefit of planting and having these natural spaces in urban areas is that that natural ground cover has the effect of lessening the impact of water runoff. So think about it like this. So especially in a place like Johannesburg, where you have in your summer months, you have these evening showers. I mean, literally a deluge of water will fall on these cities in a very short space of time. Now this creates a rapidly flowing water in urban stormwater systems and so forth. And of course, as this water cruises along, it causes harm. and that harm that's causing harm to urban infrastructure. It's causing harm to private property. But if you have areas that are planted which are positioned in such a way as to receive a lot of that water, then it has the impact of reducing the speed of that water. It softens the impact of the flowing water, and this is also an important consideration for people, for urban designers that are planning the urban infrastructure. And you'll see, for example, in Johannesburg, there are a number of rivers that flow on the outskirts of the city. And what you'll see is, if you understand the urban plan, certainly the initial urban plans, you will see that those designers will have used those natural water areas to receive the water runoff from the city. And of course, the existence of plants and planted areas certainly helps to minimize the effect of water, potential water damage. So those are just some ideas. I mean, certainly from a point of view of just also on human health, I mean, it's a proven and established principle that it's positive for human health to be surrounded by nature. I mean, that nature, you don't have to be, in the middle of the Amazon rainforest to experience that. I mean, you can have plants in your home or your office, or if you walk out into the city and there are beautiful trees planted, and that has the same effect. So really, there are these are just some of the many considerations that urban planners and city leaders need to consider and do consider, in varying levels of success in different cities, but which formulate this business, or rather this objective of a healthy urban ecology.
I'm sorry, Gordon. I know you mentioned that you're not an ecologist, but I do have to ask this. So in terms of the species, do you think that species behave differently once they're in these urban areas compared to when they're in like the wild areas, forest and stuff? Species such as birds.
I think so. The question around what you plant, I mean, that is super important, and it's become increasingly, let's put it this way, we've become increasingly aware of the importance of that. So it wasn't long ago, certainly when the city leaders planted the forests in Johannesburg, they were planting those trees for ostensibly two principal purposes. One is for beautification, and the second was for shade. And it's probably the other way, probably shade first and beautification second. So they weren't really considered, they didn't consider whether they should be planting indigenous trees or endemic species. They didn't consider what impact those trees would have on things like the water table, how they might affect the other species that exist within the ecology. So it's become clear to us that this is a more and more important topic, and I think especially within the context of Cape Town, which has a much drier climate than, say, Johannesburg. What we're experiencing in Cape Town is that we're recognizing the effect of foreign or of alien species on the water table. And so we now have, so these trees around Cape Town, not just in the city itself, obviously being planted on the periphery of the city. So in the Cape Town suburbs and on the hillsides around the city, we are now, there are massive projects by government now to eradicate these species. So they create two problems. Firstly, as I mentioned, they reduce the water table, which means that the access to underground water has been reduced. And that also affects the risk of fire. So these particular trees around Cape Town, they're not they exist in a place that naturally burns, but yet they have a very negative impact when they burn, and that's because they burn so hot. But typically, you know, around the Cape Town, if we plant any trees, and apart from the obvious in the riverine thickets and so forth, where you do get stunning trees and forests, for most of the time, or for most of the other areas, our biosphere is typified by fynbos, which is relatively short trees that have very relatively narrow leaves, and the effect of that is that they burn very quickly, and consequently the burn has quite a low impact on the area that's burned, and that area recovers very quickly. And so the bush is thick, and critters are kept safe from the fire by hiding down in the bush. You know, so all of these things, that doesn't happen if you've got a plantation of blue gums or pine trees, which when set alight will burn extremely hot, and consequently kills everything around them. So you will have seen recently when in relation to the fire that burned the city, the university, that the first trees to take alight down at the bottom, just below the Rhodes Memorial, were pine trees, and those trees had been planted there many, many years ago. Typically, the fires in Cape Town burn away from the city, and the southeast wind on that day, there was a northwest wind and blew the fire down into those pine trees, and consequently that fire burned extremely hot and went out of control very, very quickly, and caused a lot of damage. So that's just one aspect. So we've spoken about water, we've spoken about fire, and yes, I mean, the other thing is you get, for example, if you've ever walked along in a wilderness area and you come across a plantation of pine trees or blue gums, you might immediately notice that nothing grows under them. So you know, so the presence of these trees affects the rest of the environment. So most certainly, you know, if you're going to plant trees as a city, or you're going to plant trees as a resident, you really need to plant sensibly. You need to plant trees that belong there, plant trees that have been there forever. You know, the endemic species, the indigenous species, and really our cities have made great leaps and bounds forward in this regard. A good example for me is the city of Durban, Umhlanga Rocks development. So you'll see on Umhlanga Ridge, there's been massive development there over the last 20 years or so. It's almost like a Santon type development. And what the city there has done is planted fever trees, which are those beautiful bright green trees. And so when you drive along and you drive through these roads, these streets lined with the fever trees, I mean, it's absolutely beautiful. And that's the right thing to do. So they're achieving the shading objective, they're achieving the beautification objective, but they're doing it with an indigenous and endemic tree, and it makes a massive difference.
All right. Before we close, Dante, do you have another question?
I do, just one. Just in terms, in ecology, it's not only the plants that we talk about, but also the animals. So in Cape Town, you see a mass of pigeons. Can that be seen as urban ecology?
Right. So the point is, so the pigeons are part of the ecology. I mean, we are part of the ecology. So whatever living thing you see is part of the ecology. Is it a healthy ecology? Is it a natural ecology? Is it the best? Is it ecology in the state that you would want it to be if you were able to wave a magic wand? Yeah, that's the question, right? So the presence of non-endemic species such as birds or fauna, flora, yeah, these exist. Whether it's good or bad, whether you want to change, whether a city decides that's bad and wants to change it, I don't know. These things are tricky. Sometimes what you have is a changed ecology, and the extent to which you're able to change it back again, to reverse it back to its original state, yeah, those questions are really policy questions on. My guess is that certainly for trees, you want to see the right trees being planted, but you definitely want trees. You want an urban ecology that's vibrant, and how healthy it is. Yes, of course, that's about intelligence. Secondly, but firstly, you want the presence of this ecology because it has all these positive effects on the city.
All right. Thank you very much, guys. Unfortunately, we have to cut it off right here. And yeah, this was very nice. It was very knowledgeable. Thank you very much, guys. I hope to see you guys next week. I say bye. Nolwazi Mbhele. I'll see you guys. Thank you, guys.
How do we grow this influence of Black leaders, men and women, that can represent our industry inside the ANC, inside the policy-making structures?
Get to grips with the digital environment, put together best practices, what works and what doesn't, very importantly.
In the project that we're doing in Chaplat, we've created a linking bridge between those two little areas there. So it becomes a matter of just 10 minutes walk from one side to the other.
So my message to our CEOs and those chief investment officers is, where at the end of the day do you want to see your role?
So by treating all of our water back to a stage where we can bring it back into the process, we're in effect saving around about 35% of our water usage on site.